It is unprecedented. It hadn't happened in 100 years. We've gone through 6 rounds, still no speaker. And a lot of people are wringing their hands. The president today asked about it and said, oh, this is embarrassing as the world watches. I don't think so. I think this is the way our system is supposed to work. And what we have here, and I'm not against Kevin McCarthy. I've worked with Kevin. He's been on this program before. The issue here, and for the vast majority of those who are not for him, it's not about him, it's about the process. And it's about making this process work for the American people. It's about, as you heard earlier, that clip from Chip Roy, is that members need to come here and be able to represent their people by offering legislation and amendments on the floor. That's not happened. Joining me now to discuss this more, Matt Rosendale of Montana, member of Congress. And Matt, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me on again, Tony. It's great to be with you.
Well, I know you guys have been in a marathon session here the last 2 days. Something that Chip Roy brought attention to is that rarely are you all together on the House floor to have a debate and a discussion. I think this is a very healthy process. What do you think?
It is. This is our Republican action, Tony, and Chip hit the nail right on the head. We've had more debate and discussion on the House floor over the last 2 days than, quite frankly, than we've had over the last 2 years. They have eliminated regular order since before I arrived in Congress 2 years ago. And so there has not been any true discussion, debate, or collaboration that has taken place on the floor. And this is exactly what many of us were trying to restore as we put together a list of amendments that needed to be placed on the rules that govern how the floor operates, and brought that to Kevin last summer. And we wanted to have this discussion back then, but the reality of that is that he thought he was going to have 250 or 260 members of the Republican conference and had no desire to have a conversation with the people that were trying to restore order, because what it really boils down to is the redistribution of power from the Speaker and from the 9 people that sit on the Rules Committee to the balance of Congress, so that it functions the way that it's supposed to. So he wasn't interested in that.
And again, I think this is a good process. It's bringing attention to it. The leverage is with the conservatives. Again, I'm not against Kevin. I've worked with Kevin. It's the process that has it's developed and evolved, if you will, or devolved this way over time, and it's sometimes painful to do a course correction, and so I commend you and your colleagues for being willing to correct it. At the end of the day, again, I think you're in the conservatives have a lot of leverage right now. So what would it take for the conservative members who have the 20 who have not voted for Kevin? What would it take for them to say, okay, we've reached a point of agreement and we'll support you?
Someone that we could trust to actually provide the rules that we had worked so hard to get in place. And unfortunately, that person is not Kevin McCarthy. Okay, we gave him ample opportunity over the last 2 years to demonstrate leadership skills. There were Republican votes that were needed to pass the NDAA. There were Republican votes that were needed to pass the infrastructure bill. There were Republican votes that were needed to pass the continuing resolution. And each one of those opportunities gave him a chance to place some common sense reforms on each one of those pieces of legislation, whether it was eliminating vaccination mandates or eliminating new Green Deal provisions. And he failed miserably and ended up negotiating with Democrats to pass legislation. And Tony, this is just a pattern of behavior that Kevin has had for quite some time. He has been part of a leadership team for the last 10 years now that has basically managed the demise of our country. He voted with the Democrats on legislation to pass budgeting and spending bills in 2015, 2017, 18, and 19. And Tony, when they passed that legislation and he was playing a leadership role to increase all of this spending, there wasn't 20 or 30 Republicans that voted against those provisions. There was like 100 to 120 Republicans that voted against each one of those provisions. So that's the leadership part of this equation. The other part of the equation is just providing the ability for us to amend the rules
Right.
on the House floor so that we can have single subject legislation, so that we do away with 4,000-page bills, so that we can have open rules on the floor that members are actually allowed to propose amendments as long as they're germane to the subject matter. And these are things that he always points to and says, I have agreed to, but he always agrees to a little peripheral portion of it so that he can say, I agreed to it, but not substantively changing the way that the House is going to operate.
Well, I agree with the demands or the requests that the conservatives are making. I think that needs to happen in the process. So where do we go from here? Matt, you guys come back in at 8 o'clock tonight. What's the way forward?
There's people that are trying to have some conversations, but at the end of the day, we have proposed, I think, 4 or 5 alternatives to Kevin McCarthy, and we continue to get votes. So we're saying, you know something, Kevin's not going to get to 218. And that sometime or another, they're going to come to that conclusion and that reality, and that he's not going to get to 218. And then instead of trying to work with Democrats to elect a speaker, why don't they work with their Republican colleagues, and let's come up with someone within our conference that we all can agree that should be the Speaker of the House.
We're up against a break, but how long do you think this could go on, Matt?
You just froze. Your last question.
How long do you think this could last?
Oh, I'm not certain how long it'll last, but the government is funded, and no one is losing sleep, I don't think. And the republic is not going to be destroyed in the next couple of days if it takes us time. I would much rather take time and get a good Speaker of the House that we can trust than to hurry up and get someone that does a terrible job.
Yeah, I agree with you that we have time and we should do it right. Yep. And to use the process that was designed to be used. Matt Rosendale, I want to thank you for joining us. Always great to see you, my friend.
God bless you for all your work, Tony. I appreciate you.